Hey, hey, welcome back to Cream City Dreams, the podcast where I bring you incredible Milwaukee women who are doing such cool things in our community, for our community, like today's guest. I'm joined by Harper Marten, who is the founder of the Arts of Aging. And we dive deep into what she does there. But let me just tell you, she is spreading joy and creativity and dignity and inspiration to a group of people in Milwaukee who need to be revered. And here I'm talking about our elders. I'm talking about folks who live in assisted living and elder care facilities, who are living with dementia or the beginnings of dementia. And she is offering them the opportunity to create. And it's so beautiful. We also talk just about creativity itself and who gets to call themselves a creative. And heads up, it's all of us. So this conversation really is for everyone. So let's dive right in with Harper Marten. Today on the podcast, I am excited to welcome Harper Marten. Harper is the founder, art educator, and creative mind behind the Arts of Aging, an organization set up to provide art for seniors so that they can continue a life filled with connection, meaning, and self-expression. I am lucky enough to have volunteered with Harper a few times at some local facilities when she comes over to the East Side. And I have to say, it is so inspiring and so joyful to spend a morning making art, not for the finished product, but for just the process and for the conversation and the pure delight that is so obvious in the participants and the folks that you work with. So, Harper, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me and thank you for your kind words. It reminds me that I'm not crazy, that it actually is a delight what I'm
Yeah.
doing. Other
Yes.
people see it too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and for people, because Arts of Aging is relatively new, for
Mhm.
people who haven't heard about what you do, can you just give us a little more detail? We'll dive deep into it, but like just kind of your elevator pitch when people say, "What do you do?" How do you describe it?
Yeah, I tell people that I teach process art to senior and memory care communities. And I both train staff and work through workshops with people who live in senior and memory care communities, people experiencing early, mid-stage dementia, people who are just experiencing some, form of cognitive change, and just people who are entering their, what they call the third 30s.
Mm,
And
I love
yeah,
that. The third 30s.
you know, there are not a lot of definitions for that period, that stage in life. So it can be, both sort of exhilarating and also a little bit anxiety provoking. Um,
Mm.
but it's an opportunity, and I like to use process art workshops to invite people into the opportunity of that stage of life. And process art just means that we focus on the creating, the curiosity, the experimenting, the refining part of creating something rather than focusing on the outcome. So you'll never see a series of red birds come out of a workshop that I offer. It might be birds, but they'll have different legs. They'll surely have different feathers. Um, it really depends on the person who's making them. And I like to build a lot of choice into what I offer.
Nice. Yeah. We're not necessarily looking for things to hang on the refrigerator, although I'm sure some of these people do take them back and put them in their apartments.
Yeah, actually, I have a funny story about that. I just saw a woman again that had been in a workshop a couple months earlier with her husband, and it was a collage workshop. I have a photograph of his collage. Everyone's just working happily along, and I make my circle around, and he has spelled out help with his collage materials.
Oh,
His
bless.
wife and I had like discovered what he was making at the same time, and we're both just like laughing our heads off. And he that was hilarious. Well, I saw her again doing a watercolor workshop a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "Oh, I have to tell you, my husband gave that piece to my daughter for Christmas."
She's
Like
like, our,
everybody, it was the talk of like everybody's favorite gift.
oh, are you
The
okay,
frame
Dad?
in her house.
It's funny.
Yeah, so I
Well,
love the sense of humor and the self-expression.
yes, yeah, yeah. Well, okay, so season 7 is all about women who are pivoting or who have pivoted or shaken things up with some big changes. And so before we go even deeper into sort of what you do with these folks, I want to take us back a few years. So you were, before this, you were a Montessori trained art teacher.
Yeah, so I taught in Wauwatosa for about 10 years. I taught elementary art. I loved it. And my children were in a Montessori school.
Okay.
And that's really where I got my feet wet in education. I started first in a Montessori school. And before that, so that's like, just after college, one of my first jobs was in this Montessori school, and I had never heard or experienced the Montessori method of teaching
Mm,
before that. So it was a real eye opener for me. And I knew after being in that environment that that's where I wanted my kids to learn.
mm,
The focus tends to be more on how to learn. And that was really important to me. So then I got certified to teach art and I taught in public schools. And when I had an opportunity to take the Montessori training myself, I jumped at it. It was good timing for me. And then I became the dedicated school sub over at Milwaukee Montessori School. And
mm.
that gave me a chance to be in a lot of different classrooms from, K through 8, supporting the Montessori process. And it was really funny how all these pieces, kind of come together. I've always felt like it's important to take the opportunity when it's good and not necessarily when it's, the right time. And those opportunities to become an educator, to teach art, to then go back and refine what I know about teaching and how people learn was all really, really actually foundational for what I do now. But
Yeah, I was going to say full circle in terms of the process mode, because that's very much what Montessori is letting it be child led and all about the process. So yeah.
absolutely, yeah, the prepared environment and following the child, and so much of education is based on observing the person and where they're at, and that just builds in a lot of dignity,
Mm,
um, and allows for more expressions of learning, I think,
mm.
than a traditional classroom.
Yeah. So you were always an artist, or were you an artistic kid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I grew up around creative people. My dad was a writer, an inventor, and my mom was a painter. She went to fashion design school. So um,
Mm.
yeah, showed me how to make a lot of my clothes, and just always had an eye for design that way. My aunt is an interior decorator. My cousin is an artist. My brother's a comedian. So yeah, a
So
lot
it's
of
in your
creative.
DNA. Yeah, it's in your DNA to be creative. I was going to say who inspired you, but it sounds like it's just there.
I think what I grew up with was a lot of, positive feedback for like, yeah, try it, see what happens.
Mm.
Or that would be interesting. Or I wonder what would happen if, just
Yeah.
a lot of encouragement that way. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of emphasis on like problem solving. I always heard like, well, you can't be the first person who's had that problem. So what would you do next?
Mm.
I think what I've come up against a lot in terms of teaching art in, elementary school as well as with adults, what comes up a lot is the misconception that being creative or being an artist is like something you are or you aren't.
Mm.
And like you don't have the stuff for it or you do. And I just don't think that's true. It's not been my experience personally. It's not been what I have experienced working with, lots and lots of people. Creativity is innate. We come loaded with it.
Mm.
And it's a muscle that we, build or don't. And I do always sort of check this against like my own math skills. I don't see myself as particularly strong in the areas of math. And yet I also have to acknowledge that it's not a muscle that I enjoy strengthening.
Right.
So I do, it is available to me with practice, and
Yeah.
I just don't. And that is some people just are not drawn to exercise their, creative muscles. And yet I think it all comes down to problem solving. So
Yeah.
whether or not you see yourself as creative, you have had experiences where you've used your ability to problem solve, and it's very similar.
Well, and I wonder too, in the case of art in particular, where people don't, or they assume creativity means you're an artist, right? Or like that I can draw or I can paint or I can,
Mhm.
do something tangible with my hands. And of course, creativity is so much bigger than that. We know, and even ultimately, maybe what you're saying is creativity is about problem solving, right? But
Mhm.
I'm thinking about like art teachers and how as children, like there's no child who would say they're not creative until maybe somebody says, "Oh, that's not a house. Let me show you what a house looks like," or you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
I wonder if all the people who are like, "Oh, I'm not creative," it's because maybe they had a really yucky art teacher one day who said, "No, that's not how you do it," or whatever.
And do you know, I mean, according to Brene Brown's work, 85% of people have had experiences that they would call negative in the arts in their formal schooling.
Oh,
That's
wow.
staggering. 85%. I really took that personally when I was in the classroom. I had to do a little soul searching, like, was I one of those people? And but it's very, very important to me. And I am so grateful for the teachers that I was in community with in Wauwatosa. The art department there is so strong.
Mm,
And we all really centered on voice. Um,
yeah.
skills can be taught, but voice belongs to the person. And so our work is drawing that out of a person.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so nowhere in there is room to tell somebody, don't quit your day job or anything awful like that. And
Yeah.
so it's astonishing to me that so many people have had, negative experiences. But I tell you, every time I do a workshop, somebody has a story about an art teacher or a neighbor or a parent who said something like, don't quit your day job, or you don't have what it takes to do this.
Yeah. For shame, those people.
It's, well, it probably is a story that they heard. You either have it or you don't. And you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's all innocent, but yeah, I do think that we can start right now making new stories about who gets to be creative, and that's everybody.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit then about your transition or your pivot from being an art teacher to this concept of a program to work with older folks. When did that happen? I know your father was a big influence there.
He was. My father experienced about 10 years of dementia, and it it happened rather gradually. Um, in my dad's case, his personality was intact his whole life. So you needed to watch for things that were amiss. But
Mm,
right around the time my daughter was home from the hospital, she's just a couple days old, I got a phone call from the police in Grand Rapids, Michigan, that my dad was found napping in his car in a grocery store parking lot. So that was about 5 hours east of my dad's house.
mm.
And
Wow.
thus began our journey together.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about dementia care and the supports that exist in our country and how to be there for my dad. And I knew nothing about dementia. I did not have an experience of it before that.
Mm,
So, I think like anybody, when you come into, a new big situation, you sort of look in your bag of tools and see like, what do I have here that can make sense of this? And I leaned a lot on my experience with art.
mm.
I've noticed right away that it solved the problem of, if I bring my kids along to visit my dad, what are we all going to be able to do together that would be engaging give us all a chance to like contribute in a way that could keep everybody busy for a little while, keep everybody moving forward, feeling good. And that was art,
Mm.
so sometimes we would, make pictures to bring to my dad. Sometimes we would bring the art materials to be together and make something. And I didn't know that was anything different than just me leaning on my bag of tricks. But the more and he was in a couple different communities as we, worked to find the right fit for him care wise.
Mm.
And wherever we were, I would, kind of look around and see that it wasn't happening anywhere else in the community. And I thought, gosh, what I'm doing isn't too hard. Maybe I could show people, maybe I could bring materials, maybe I could, invite people to join in. And of course, when you are the, primary care partner with someone experiencing dementia and you have little kids at home, your eyes are very much on the, next step in front of you. So nothing came of it until my dad completed his life. And he completed his life at a really wonderful community that actually showed me that Montessori is being applied in a senior community, particularly for people experiencing dementia. And I didn't know that existed. And it really
Yeah.
opened my eyes and connected some dots for me. And I was so grateful for their compassion and just innovation that I wanted to be able to gift them something when he passed. So I
Mm.
gave them a little art kit, and it was just, sort of Montessori style tray with some art materials that could be used in lots of different ways, and just a couple different ideas of how they could use it.
Mm.
And the executive director um, actually was a community run by Koru Health. So Andy Lane gave me a call and said, how do we get more of these? And how can you tell me more about, you know, how we can implement this in our communities because nobody's doing this. And it gave me an opportunity to develop what I'm doing now. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So it at first you're just kind of doing this on the side, making small kits and then sending them to this one place.
Mhm.
And do you train their facilitators or do you just send them the kits and trust that they're gonna, know how to watercolor or whatever was in the kits?
Yeah. So I created a couple kits, and then pretty quickly we decided that what was really going to be valuable for their communities was like a studio space
Mm.
that felt like um, you can go here and have an experience of self-expression through art. And so we worked at Parkview Gardens down in Racine to create kind of a maker studio, a drop-in space where the art materials were self-serve, and when it was open, you were available to come in and create as you like. Just delight in
Yeah.
some art making, and so that was really exciting to be able to set the space for people, make a new home for self-expression in that community. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, when do you realize then that this little idea that started with that seed there might have legs that could expand and grow and become what it is today?
I started training the staff at Koru. We still work together. They're just wonderful, wonderful people, and we did trainings there. I did workshops there, and they really let me um, use their community to develop what I'm offering now. Do some experimenting, get creative about what's meaningful and um, engaging, and how to empower people. I had a lot of experience working with elementary age students, but I didn't have the same experience with adult learners. And
Mm.
I wanted to make sure that the dignity that I find so important and valuable in a Montessori environment or an art studio for children was the same for adults. And there is a little bit of a tweak. For example, with littles, I'm giving a lot of like oral instruction. So
Mm.
tell them a thing to do and then wait for them to show me that they've done that, and then the next direction. With adults, I found that having written instructions available was more empowering. So then the learning didn't appear to belong to me, but actually it
Mm.
was available for everyone. And certainly, like as you grow older, in a formal education setting, there are, written instructions that you follow. But primarily with the littles that I was working with, I wasn't doing that. And so it was a really important shift for me to make, to think about like, who does this experience belong to? And really just incorporating the written word sort of unlocked that. And then
Mm.
that was something that I learned from a great program out of the Scripps Gerontology School at Miami University called Opening Minds Through Art, or OMA. And that training showed me that, this idea I'm having of using art to engage minds, a diverse range of cognitive ability, is actually really valuable. And it's
Mm.
out there being studied. And they just had some really lovely, robust training that I was so excited to be part of. And yeah, just introduced me to some nuance of working with adult learners. And now I'm like halfway through facilitating one of those trainings for OMA right now. So I feel really
Mm.
excited to be part of this like growing community of art for people experiencing dementia and cognitive change, which is then part of a bigger community called social prescribing. And that is a movement that really originated in the UK, in Norway, and Finland, and has recently moved to the US. It's sort of starting to take root here, but it really looks at well being as really integral to our health, and
Mm.
has real implications for our health and our ability to age the way we would like to. So they're finding that people who have a strong sense of well-being will live independently for longer, will need fewer health interventions, things like isolation and depression, and feelings of loneliness, and questioning where you have agency in your life as you age. All of those things can be addressed by social prescribing, and it can be things like a process art class,
Mm.
like I offer, but it can also be things like museum visits, or learning to play an instrument, or being part of a poetry writing group or creative writing group. And
Mm.
we're finding that those have real, meaningful outcomes in people's lives.
Yeah. And are these organizations, OMA or the universities that they're attached to, they're doing studies, and so there's data around this as well to back what you're doing up?
That was maybe the most exciting part about finding OMA, was that they have data to show that people's sense of well-being increases as they participate in programs like an OMA session, they would call it, but an
Yeah.
art making session.
Yeah. Well, and because you always hear about like, oh, as you get older, keep doing the crossword puzzles, keep doing Sudoku, engage your brain. But
Mhm.
I'm wondering, those are such solitary activities. I wonder if the research is panning out that I mean, you talk about isolation, right? That it's better if we're in community doing this.
Yes, so important to be in community. And that's why memory cafes are so powerful as well. I know you had Ann Basting on the podcast, and
Hmm.
she's been so critical in growing the memory cafe movement in the country. And she's helping to create a network of those cafes because, again, an idea that came to us from the UK is taking root here, and really, really powerful to just say, here's a space that is dementia friendly, and you are welcome to be here and to contribute as you can. And that the ways that you contribute are still important, whether your cognitive ability has changed. And those spaces are just so important for, really, in the same way as process art, they're not for the outcomes. They're really for a space to contribute.
Yeah, and to
Uh,
feel you use the word dignity a few times, but to feel that dignity and to feel like I matter, I still matter, like I feel like our aging process sometimes. I'm thinking about my own grandmother who also went through dementia and was in a care facility that was, at first, it was great until the money ran out, and then it wasn't so great. You know what I mean? And it didn't feel very dignified by the end. And so I feel like, yeah, programs like this that continue to uplift our seniors and remind them that they are important in our community, and we're not just shoving them off in a distant place for somebody else to take care of, that they're ours.
yes, yes. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I know that for our culture, we have a lot to learn about aging and
mm,
doing it with grace. And I think that grace requires being willing to sit with uncomfortable things.
mm,
I don't think in our culture that we have really um, embraced a full life cycle. Going back to Montessori, we talk a lot about the cycle of life and how a butterfly begins as an egg and then becomes a caterpillar, and then there's a transformation to butterfly, which is still largely a mystery, and then they lay eggs and the life cycle continues. We don't talk about humans in that same way. I had an experience of hospice with my grandfather, and I didn't know hospice even existed before that. And
mm,
there were so many things about death that I thought were, just completely a mystery. And people and in his hospice were walking me through, like, here's what you'll experience on this day, or in this week of the transition, you may hear these kinds of things, or they may describe people coming to visit them, and that means that they're in this stage of dying. I had no idea that those things were
mm,
part of, like, but I think it's just because we're scared of it. Death is a scary thing. There's a lot of mystery around it. But I
mhm,
think that what happens when we are scared of it is we stop looking. And
mm,
then the people who are experiencing approaching the end of life are surrounded with a lot of people who don't want to look at them.
mm.
And it's not them, but it's the dying.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I think that being able to look at that with some grace, finding ways, like maybe creativity, make it more comfortable to occupy uncomfortable spaces together, or big mystery spaces where we don't have all the answers, makes that a little bit easier, I hope. But just,
Mm.
yeah, we still want to be connected at every stage of our lives.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that doesn't end. So do you remember the night before you were gonna walk into your principal and say, "Okay, that's it, I quit." Like, do you remember that transition for you in terms of how you decided, all right, I'm gonna go for it now. I'm gonna make this a business.
I have had such a wonderful relationship with Milwaukee Montessori School. I have known so many people since they were 3, and now they're 33. And so I was there for 5 years, and then I took a 10-year break, and then I came back to teach there for another like 10, 15 years. And that afforded me, the ability to make things up as I go, and find ways that we can, support each other. Um, I was teaching in the classroom through COVID, um, and teaching in much in the same style as we are communicating right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really, really grateful to that community um, for the, sort of symbiosis that we established, where I was able to do my training there, and I was also able to be the sub that everyone could rely on. So when I stepped away, it was like, I'm grateful that it was a really gradual transition away. So I did have a year or two where I knew that my hours subbing were going to get shorter as my hours teaching workshops grew longer.
Mm.
And I also started working with a coach around that time, which was so important to me. Her name is Jean Van Hall, and she had a website called The Artful Parent that was around when I was teaching, and it was a resource for me that I was always dipping into. Just for those of you who teach kindergarten, you know, the next lesson comes up quick because they do things invariably a lot faster than you think they will. So
Mm.
it's always like, oh, geez, kindergarten's coming. What are we doing? And her blog of ideas, processed art ideas to engage kids at home really helped me form my ideas of how I wanted to present things in class. So I had followed her for a long time. And then when I heard she was coaching, I reached out to her, and it was really so wonderful. We had just one initial call. I remember I was sitting in the parking lot at MMS and just had the opportunity to tell her, like, okay, this is my wild and crazy idea. And she was the first person who didn't hear me and just go, fun. What, you know, to any dreamer who's ever shared an idea, that
Uh-huh.
fun just means like, I don't know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but you sound happy about it.
Good luck.
So yeah, good luck with that. She understood what I was describing and knew how to help me go for it. But I honestly think that just hearing somebody say, yes, I hear what you're saying, and I I want to help you take those next steps was
Mm.
really just so comforting. Somebody who got it. And so that really helped me be more intentional about moving away from teaching in the classroom, moving towards the arts of aging.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's where we're at today. How does it work? How many places do you visit? Are you every day booked out? Are you the only one in Milwaukee? Sorry, it's a lot of questions at once, but
Yeah. Right. Yes, I am the only person in Milwaukee who teaches process art to senior and memory care communities.
mm,
And I work with a lot of different communities. Right now, I work with, gosh, it's sort of tricky to describe, but I will say that I travel most of the week to different communities. I operate out of each community's studio space. So maybe in the future I would have my own sort of brick and mortar studio, but right now what I like to do is be in place in communities. So I travel around the like metro Milwaukee area. I think the furthest I travel right now is about 45 minutes. And
okay.
it's like art on a cart. I wheel my little wagon of art supplies in, and I have supplies for up to 20 people. And I like to say that, if you have, just a handful of residents who, are feeling up to trying it out, invite their family member to come join. Let's get some new staff to come sit in. I'm really comfortable in an integrated setting,
Mm,
intergenerational settings, because I really think that it's important for people to see that art is for everyone at every age, and that wherever we're at, we have something to express. And that connection is just so easy in those spaces. Yeah. So
yes.
I do workshops and I train staff. Then I am creating a newsletter and I'm doing some online training right now. So yeah, at this stage where the business is young, I really am trying everything
Mm.
to find, what is most valuable to the people that I'm wanting to serve.
And do the individuals who come pay you or the place itself, that's how you make your money is through that they pay you as opposed to charging per person?
Yes, on a whole, the community that I serve pays me. There are some communities that will say, sign up and, then the residents pay for a portion of it, but on the whole, it comes from the community. And actually, that is something that I'm really interested in moving forward is identifying more grant opportunities for the communities that I serve so that I really can serve everyone who, would want process art in their setting too. I would
Mm.
like to get to a place where the cost is not a hindrance for people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it does. There is such a spectrum of care, right, for aging in place or aging with dementia in those facilities. And yeah, it would be so cool. I could, everybody benefits, not just the wealthy who can afford places that would have programs. I feel like they must be out there. I mean, who knows now? But let's please God, let there be some funding out there for this.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and it's just a matter of connecting people with the funding that is available. So I am working with the Wisconsin Assisted Living Association to do some professional development classes for their members. And those are communities that do advocacy in the area of senior care. And those are the kind of connections that I think are going to be valuable moving forward, and in including social prescribing in all of our communities. Yeah.
Mm, yeah, I love that idea of social prescribing. Like here, instead of a RX for a drug, what you have to do is spend 3 hours watercoloring today, and that will make you feel better.
Yes. And I know you've had that experience, right, Megan? That watercolor has been hugely transformative for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like we were talking about at the beginning. It's like I wouldn't if you said, "Are you an artist?" I would have been like, "No, no, no, I'm not." I mean, I'm creative, yes. I wouldn't have denied that necessarily, but like, oh, I can't paint. But look what happens when you make a blob with water. It's so forgiving. Yes. Damn it. I'm an artist.
Yes, yes, you absolutely are. And yeah, there's so many ways that we qualify ourselves, and it just gets in the way of creating. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel like everybody should come to one of your sessions because they are so fun. Are you looking for, do you need volunteers or
I would love volunteers. I
okay.
have a dear and dedicated volunteer that her name is Sue, and we met in the TOSA school. She was a junior kindergarten teacher. If you had kids at Lincoln and Wauwatosa, you probably had Miss G, the beloved Miss G, and she's now retired, and she volunteers with me. And there is a volunteer training process, and then yeah, you're invited to come join us and be present and facilitate art
Yeah.
making with seniors and people experiencing dementia. I would love to hear what your experience of it was, and particularly working with people experiencing dementia. But I would just tell people that it is really not nearly as scary, I think, as we have been led to believe, or the stories that we've heard, or some people speak from their sadness and the loss that they experience when a loved one has gone through dementia. And again, in terms of like grace in this aging process, I think there needs to be room for the story of beautiful moments along the way in that journey of dementia, that,
Mm,
an acceptance maybe that we wouldn't have chosen this for a loved one, for anybody for that matter. And it is part of our reality right now. And we have an opportunity to connect and to have engaging and beautiful moments with
mm.
people who are experiencing that kind of change.
No, it's not scary and it's really joyful. And you said like you're just present because that's all you can be with somebody who is living with dementia. They are so in that moment. And so you by proxy are too. And so yeah, it's I wondered if you want to just share briefly some of the actual activities that you do. And also, I want to talk about because I know you have these on your website, there's a shop. So I know we do have listeners who aren't in the Milwaukee area. If people wanted
Yeah.
to get some of these kits that you started out with, talk a little bit about what you have there as well?
Yeah, so on the website, there are 4 kits. They're called DIT kits. So they are for you to do together. They're do it together kits. And they have materials for up to 4 people or 4 sessions, however you want to use. A generous amount of supplies for open-ended art experiences. And that just means that I provide artist quality materials that I know will be satisfying right out of the box. And that they will last you a long time and be there for you when you want to experiment. So if you don't have the muscle strength in your hands that you once did, the brushes in the watercolor kit are balanced for the hand the way good silverware is. And the bristles are tapered in a way that can make broad strokes and really fine strokes available in just that one brush. So sometimes your stamina wanes as you advance through dementia. We want the materials to be, of good quality so that you have a satisfying experience every time you come to those materials. So yeah, one kit is watercolor, and then we have a weaving kit. And actually, Ellen at Makery Maven here in the Milwaukee area created the weaving looms that are in that kit. And there's just like the added sensory experience of the smell of the burned edges of the wooden shapes. So like when you're finished, your hands smell like you've been around a campfire.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. And so there's, watercolor and weaving, and we have a sun catcher mandala kit and also a collage kit. So yeah, really, really satisfying materials, engaging materials that are available for anybody who wants to gather and have an open-ended art experience. And those are on the website. You can order those all over the world if you like. I sent one to a woman in the UK who cares for her grandmother, and every once in a while she'll send me videos. And it's been months now, and they're still using the paints and the brushes to do some really cool stuff together. So that really lights me up. And then, so I teach similar workshops in communities. The one that's really been a hit lately is paper marbling, and it just starts with a bath of thickened water. It's actually thickened with seaweed. And then the inks are floated on the surface, and we can use the straw to sort of draw the ink through the water bath. And then you can even like blow through the straw to, cause the air to move the ink along the surface. And it's just become, so fun, so meditative, and people just really feel tickled by that experience. I think it's very playful, but the quality of the materials, I think, adds a kind of sophistication to it to maybe give people more permission to just play. So that's been a hit lately. I just recently did a stained glass workshop. It was a faux stained glass workshop, so it's tissue paper on glass. But that was also a really cool experience of mixing color and using light in your work. Watercolor is always a hit. I like to bring clay. So, I mean, maybe it's sort of apparent now that what I like to do is bring a material that I know has a lot of directions to go in, well, open-ended, so that I know that engaging with the material will be satisfying and it can go in a lot of different directions. So
love it. It really is fun, I have to say. I enjoyed it probably as much as your participants when I volunteered.
Glad.
Yeah. So do you have a, 5-year, 10-year vision? Would it grow so much that you need to hire staff, or are you good chugging along where you're at?
I guess both. I'm really enjoying where I'm at. I am sort of tickled at how it has grown and is, taking root, and how I'm starting to feel, confident in, how I'm serving. And I am thinking about growing to where I would need to hire staff. I think the next immediate step would be like an assistant, which is I'm at the phase now where I'm just imagining it. Like in my day, what tasks would I, hand over to somebody else? My kids are 15 and 12, and so I am experimenting with them,
Yeah.
like, making them my assistants and trying that out. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think next step is probably an assistant. And then from there, thinking about some staff. I am the person who would be facilitating your workshop if you hire the Arts of Aging right now. So I could reach more communities and serve more people who are seniors and experiencing cognitive change if there were more of me, right? So
Mm.
um, that is that's something that I'm interested in pursuing. I would also love to do more training, and that is one of the more immediate goals. In the early summer, we'll be partnering with OMA, with Opening Minds Through Art, to offer their training in person. So
Mm.
they have not offered in-person training since before COVID. Like so many things, those programs are still coming back online. And so this program will be hybrid, where the formal training will happen online, and then the art making, the actual practice, will be in person here in Milwaukee. So I'm really excited to be offering
Yeah.
that. It's a certification. People can be certified to teach process art in their communities in the OMA style.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in reaching out to the greater Milwaukee area, even as far as the Chicago area, because surprisingly, it just hasn't come to this area yet. And I really think that it's just going to be so valuable for communities all over the world. But if I can just be part of bringing it to our community here, I just know, particularly in Milwaukee, where everything just has such grassroots energy, I think it'll be
Mm.
really powerful here. So I'm excited about that. That'll be early June.
Mm.
Be hosting that training for executive directors, lifestyle directors, people who are bringing activity, meaningful, engaging activity to senior communities.
Love it. Love it. And I feel like a lot of the listeners of this show, anecdotally anyway, are people who are entering that sandwich generation, right? Where they're starting, they've got kids of their own, but also starting to take care of parents. And so what a beautiful way and a gift to offer them in terms of engaging with their own parents in that way through these kits
Yes.
and
Yeah. A
maybe even through
big
this
love for
training. Yeah.
yeah. The training is absolutely available to anybody who wants to find an art-based way to engage meaningfully with seniors and people experiencing dementia.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could
Yeah.
be really meaningful that way.
Well, and as this is a podcast about women and Milwaukee women who are living the dream, the question I always end with is who is a woman that you see living her dream, or a dreamy woman, or somebody inspiring you?
I knew this was coming, Megan. I've been thinking about it because I'm a longtime listener, first time caller.
Woohoo!
And there are so many people that I have thought about wanting to talk about, give voice to in the Milwaukee area. I think one of the people that I want to highlight is Liz Loader.
Mm.
She was the first Montessori directress that I ever worked with, and we are dear friends to this day. And I think she was probably the first person to show me how the role of an educator is to invite a desire to learn out of students.
Mm.
And that stays with me today. And the kind of dignity that I work to like embody in my teaching, it came from working with her.
Mm.
And she also was one of those people that said, like, oh, what would be cool is if you could combine like what we do here in the classroom with the art that you do. I wonder what that would be like. She a long time ago told me that I should do art parties for kids. So
Oh,
that was like, when I was just a young upstart and I didn't know what I was going
yeah.
to do with my summers when school was out. So she's really encouraged me from the start, and
Yeah.
what I know about Montessori, what I still love about Montessori today, I learned from her.
Oh,
So
love
yeah.
that. So she saw that in you.
Oh yeah. You and I got to see Venus Williams um,
Mm,
together through She Stands Tall. So I think those are two other people that, I know you've had on the podcast, Stephanie Melnick at She Stands
mm-hmm.
Tall and Venus Williams. Stephanie is such an incredible, dynamic person connecting me with so many women in Milwaukee who empower each other and celebrate each other and create such empowering spaces together,
Yeah.
and really like embody what I've always loved about Milwaukee. I didn't grow up here. I grew up outside Chicago, and when I first moved here, it was that grassroots energy that I noticed first. And She
Mm-hmm.
Stands Tall really does a great job of like putting feet to that grassroots energy. And Venus Williams too does the same.
Yeah.
But she does just such a loving job of revealing my stories to me and inviting me to question my thinking and my beliefs, and it helps me to feel even more connected to my community,
Mm-hmm.
to question those assumptions, and to get it's easier to connect when my stories aren't between me and the people that I live with.
Yes,
So
yeah, absolutely. Both of those women are phenomenal. I'll put links to the episodes from them. Thanks for reminding me. And it reminds me that I need to reach out to Stephanie again because Women's Entrepreneurship Week is coming up at the beginning of May, as it does each May. And need to get in touch with her to help promote that because, yes, as
yeah,
you say, she is a wonderful connector of women. So, for all
yeah.
the women listening, if you are not familiar, make sure you sign up, get involved in that week because it's a great opportunity for networking and
Mhm.
just reaching across our silos and our bridges and all the things to meet and support.
Yeah,
So,
connecting, creating connections. Yeah, yeah. So
absolutely.
grateful for them all. Yeah.
Yes,
And
yeah,
for
yes.
you, you're a connector too. And thank you for inviting me into this space and
Oh,
connecting me.
yes, absolutely. Well, I'm so happy you could join me. I love what you're doing. I love that you're honoring the elders in our community with respect and joy and dignity and just the opportunity to create and to call themselves creative. I love that. Thank you for inspiring us.
Thank you. Thank you. It feels uh really joyful. Yeah,
Yeah,
to be part
yes.
of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what better way to live than, especially in these times, we need to be joyful.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. A bit incongruous, right? But I think that is just the kind of rebellion that we need to be part of right now, the joyful kind.
As I said in the beginning, I have volunteered a few times with Harper, and it is just really fun. She is organized, she's got the materials, and you just get to show up and dive into these art projects and feel like a kid again because it really is something that anyone can do. Her instructions are simple, and you work right alongside these seniors who are just having a blast doing this, who look forward to these days with the arts of aging when they come to their facilities. So, I highly, highly recommend. And I love the idea that she has these kits for sale. So even if you are not in Milwaukee, or even if you are in Milwaukee and maybe have a parent or a grandparent or someone you know living in an assisted living facility or an elder care facility, and this could be something you bring to do together. And I promise you, you will be surprised at how it turns out. You will want to hang it on your fridge, no doubt. It's not just a place for kids' art. Anybody can put out on the fridge. Check out the offerings on her website if that's something you might want to do. with your own parent or your own kid. Creativity has been a theme on this podcast. I've talked about it a lot with guests because there is this idea in our culture that only artists or people who can paint or draw or make music or write, those are the people who get to call themselves creative. But actually, that is a myth. We are all creative. And I don't know if I've heard it described quite in the way Harper did today, in that creativity is problem solving. Creativity is looking at something in our world and saying, how can we, whatever it is, fix this, make it better, work around something, make something come into fruition. So many different ways to solve problems. But creative people, AKA all of us, can figure things out and can do that. And I love that she phrased it that way, because that's such an interesting way to think about creativity and such an inclusive way to think about creativity. So thank you, Harper, for that. I'm going to be mulling on that one for a while. I will put links to all of the ways you can reach Harper and get involved if you want to volunteer or just find out more about what she does. Or if your parents or grandparents or someone you know is in one of these communities in the Milwaukee area or the greater Milwaukee area, and you want them to know about what the Arts of Aging does, maybe so they can bring it to them, you can share this episode, you can share her links, or order a kit yourself and send it to them as a little teaser. And I know we all know folks who are aging. That is the one certainty in life, right? We are all going to get old. Whether we do it gracefully or not, that's a different question. But we are all going to get old. And so wouldn't we all want to do it with dignity? So if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody you love or somebody who could use it. Please also make sure, if you are enjoying the podcast, that you are signed up for my newsletter. I am inching away from social media. I've been talking about this forever, but it feels like I'm wanting to do it more and more because of the world we're in. And so if you want to stay connected and find out more about my guests, find out what's coming, and also maybe help me find future guests, I'd love it if you would hop over to my website, creamcitydreams.com, and sign yourself up for my newsletter. That comes out every week when I am in season, describing the guest, more ways to reach them, and a little bit more insight into my reactions to these interviews that I don't necessarily share on the podcast. So we're building a very nice community of Cream City Dreamers over there, and I'd love to have you. All right, I will be back next week with another incredible Milwaukee woman living her dream in the Cream City. Until then, Milwaukee, keep on dreaming.